Hi everyone, Simon here from Be Sober, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to interview Annie Grace, author of This Naked Mind and founder of the Alcohol Experiment. Hi Annie, thanks for joining
Hi,
us.
Simon. Hi, yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we've been asking members of the Be Sober Facebook group to put forward questions to ask you, and we've had quite a few. So I wonder if it's okay with you if I perhaps fire away with some questions. I think if I asked all of them, we'd probably be here all night. So if that's okay, I'll fire
Yeah,
away
great.
and perhaps we can go from there. So the first question is from Wendy. She loves your book and would like to hear your views and tips for staying sober long term.
I think staying sober long term is really absolutely all about how you work on your thinking long term. So we never do stuff we don't feel like doing in the long term. Sure, we can go to a dentist appointment that we don't feel like going to, but we would always, we can't do something we don't feel like doing. And in order to feel like doing stuff, we have to change how we're thinking about what it is. So you need to get to a place where you don't feel like drinking, or you feel happier without drinking. And when you get to that place, then long term becomes easy. One day becomes 1 year, becomes 10 years. It doesn't matter. The time actually ceases to be relevant. And the best way I know to do that is really narrowing in on the things that are set in your head when you feel like you want to drink. So when that comes up, when those situations happen, say, okay, what is it? What is it that I think this is going to give me? What is the benefit that I think that I'm going to get for this? Because we never do something that we don't think provides a benefit. And then take that benefit. And this technique is actually coming out in the Alcohol Experiment, as I alluded to, but it's coming out at the end of this month actually, and it's really 3 steps. So it's awareness, that's the step 1. What is it? Clarity is where did it come from? Okay, I think I'm going to be left out of this conversation if I don't drink because, everybody else is drinking. So where did that come from? At what point did you build that belief? Was it, did you feel left out of the kids' birthday parties when you were there? You were 8 years old and nobody was drinking? Yeah, probably not. But then maybe it was in college or university when everybody was having a drink. Where did you believe that? And then you really go into that. How does it make you feel when you have that thought? When you think about, okay, how does that make me feel if I'm not going to have a drink, but I feel like I'm being left out? If you really explore how that makes you feel, the mind does this amazing thing. It says, ooh, that hurts. I'm actually going to let go of that belief because I realize and I recognize now that it's painful. And then you just think, well, what would it be like if I didn't have that? And the mind says, ooh, that feels better, And so that's a really cool thing. And then the last step, it's 3 steps: ACT, awareness, clarity, and turnaround. And turnaround is just saying, okay, what's the opposite of that? And this is really important. Come up with the opposite. How would I feel without that drink? Or I'm going to be left out if I don't have a drink. Okay, the opposite is I'm not going to be left out if I don't have a drink. And then the key here is you have to come up with a few ways that are authentically true for you, that is as true or truer than you. Can't just beat it into your brain. You have to be okay, well, how is that true? Well, the truth is that every time I do have a drink, I end up getting drunk and then I don't really connect with my friends anymore. So it's actually true that I'll be more present without a drink, or whatever it is, but you come up with a way that actually feels true to you. And then you cling on to that belief. And if you can do that with things that arise, then long-term sobriety becomes really easy.
Absolutely. I mean, your book was an absolute game changer for me. So first of all, thank you for that. And the thing that resonated with me so much was the whole change in your mindset from can't have to don't want. And that genuinely happened for me. And you were responsible for that, which is just amazing. And for me, that's a huge thing. That was the key to unlocking it all. And obviously, all the things you said there absolutely make sense. But I think that change of mindset is absolutely vital. So, okay, that's a wonderful answer. Let's move on to a question from Smy, who says, "Will the Alcohol Experiment remain a free service?"
So the Alcohol Experiment is doing 2 cool things. It is January, and actually within a few days, so January 1st, I'm going to do a live Alcohol Experiment. So that's going to be live, where I go live every single day on Facebook in a closed private group. And if you pre-order my book, that's $27. If you don't, and you don't get the book, which you don't need the book to do it, it's $47. That's just going to be for the live one. But as of January 15th, so the free thing has been in beta for a year now. We've had 30,000 people go through it. It's been so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. But I have to take it down and update it. Like I've changed, it's 3Ds. I've rebranded it ACT. Like I've just made this based on people's feedback. So we have to take the site down, update it, and then it will go back live. I'm hoping by January 15th. And then yes, it will be free.
It surprises me actually that it is a free service, because I used it for the whole 30 days, and it's a wonderful tool, and it's got a lot of depth to it, and a lot of work's gone into it, and a lot of love's gone into it. You can see that, and I think it's a testament that it is free, and it's been free for for that period of time. And I think that sort of shows your passion to helping people over kind of just making money out of something. So
I think it's really important for it to be free. I mean, a lot of people have told me, well, if people don't pay, they don't pay attention, and you'd have a higher completion rate if people paid for the service. I think that can be true in some things, but I also think that when we really are ready to question this, we actually are at a place where we want to make a change. And so any barrier, the whole point of the alcohol experiment for me is to take down barriers to entry. Like you don't have to Google, I have a drinking problem. You can just take an experiment and see what happens. You don't have to commit yourself to a lifetime of sobriety. You can just take an experiment and see what happens. So I want to take down any barrier you have to asking yourself that question. So if that's a financial barrier, I want to take that away. Like, to be totally transparent with you, after the 30 days, I give people an option to make a contribution to the site to retain lifetime access to all their journals.
Yeah, I made a contribution. I've done that.
Oh, thank you. So that's how it's supported, and that's why it's free, is that it's just completely user supported. So obviously as it grows, the server cost is like astronomical, but it grows and people make contributions, and it's just a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's why I just want to take down the barriers to entry.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. I want to get through these. Leslie says that, why is it that 1 or 2 drinks has never been enough? I always had to drink to oblivion, pass out, fall over, and end up in hospital. Hopefully that wasn't every time she drank.
Well, first of all, it's not your fault. That is really something that could be very chemical in the brain. What happens, and this is just absolutely fascinating to me, is that when you have just 1 or 2 drinks, the part of your brain responsible for making decisions is impaired, the prefrontal cortex. And they did this study that I'll just talk on briefly because it's so worthwhile. But basically, they took people who had an addiction to something and they put them in an MRI machine where they're scanning their brain. And they showed them something that was that substance. So if it was whiskey, it was like whiskey on the rocks, and it was just a picture of it. And what happened was that the part of their brain that was like, the animal part of their brain that was like, I want that, I need that, nothing else is going to stop me from getting that evolutionary like need part of the brain lit up. And the part of the brain that's the human decision-making part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, actually went dark. So your ability to make a decision in certain moments is completely and totally impaired because of the alcohol you drank historically. And so it's just really, the simplest answer, and there's a lot of levels to it, and we could talk about them, we could talk about physiological, but I think the most important answer is that is chemical. It is chemical based on your historical drinking, and it's not your fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great answer. And thankfully, I think Leslie's well on the sober journey now, so hopefully no more trips to hospital. Heather, who's a wonderful contributor to our group, and she's actually one of the admins now. She says, how can I stay sober and feeling good when times get tough or boring, or I feel as though I'm missing out? I'm single and don't know the best places to go to meet new people now I'm sober. I see pubs as places full of alcoholics, and I'm scared I'll end up with a drinker and get tempted to go backwards.
Yeah, that can be really tough. That's the reality, is that the majority of things do revolve around drinking. And so finding that 1 or 2 things that don't, especially like in the UK, I lived there for a long time. It's hard. Like I don't know that I even met anybody that didn't necessarily drink. And I think that what I did is really alternative stuff. So for instance, I always had liked climbing. So like going back and finding a climbing gym. You can't actually physically be in with people over climbing. Or we started doing Taekwondo and connecting people over that. Like, you're not actually going to be drinking when you're breaking boards. And so finding those alternative things was really, really helpful for me. But then also, I think I'd give you the same answer, that I really gave initially, is that doing the work on that thought. So like that question from Wendy, where you need to do that technique, the ACT, to that thought. And it's not about saying, okay, contradicting it directly. It's about finding something that feels true to you. So for example, if your thing is like, I'm going to be bored if I don't drink, you can't just say, I'm not going to be bored if I don't drink, because that's not going to feel true. And when you tell yourself over and over something that does not feel true, you're going to create more cognitive dissonance or internal disagreement. That's not going to help you. But what you can say, I am working on learning things that will make me not bored when I don't drink. I am improving my ability to entertain myself without alcohol. And those things will feel true to you. And as soon as you start telling yourself that, like I even recommend to my private coaching clients, like I say, set an alarm on your phone, have it go off 7 times a day, then make yourself a timer for 60 seconds and go through just build that thought that I am working on ways to entertain myself without alcohol. What happens there is you actually build that thought in your brain and you start to look for ways to entertain yourself without alcohol. And what you focus on grows. And then all of a sudden you see all these possibilities of ways to entertain yourself without alcohol. I don't know if it's in the UK yet, but there is a thing called Daybreaker. And it's literally like 7 a.m. sober rave dance parties. It's like amazing. So it's just different things like that. Not there yet. Fringe activities you can find.
Oh, maybe I should start one. This sounds amazing.
You should start one. Go to daybreaker.com, I think is what it is. And just check it out because it's unreal.
And then Heather's also got a couple of other questions. How will I meet new people without the Dutch courage of drink? And I suppose, funny enough, we've had a few people talking about sober sex and relationships this week. So that sort of ties in quite nicely with one of those thorny subjects.
I think this is kind of twofold. I mean, number one is really doing the work on, so I believe that there's really 3 reasons that we drink alcohol, 3 levels of belief. We have the beliefs around the substance, that it's going to lower my inhibitions, that it's going to make me relaxed, etc. And we can do the ACT technique on those. We can overcome those. Then we have the belief about society. I'm going to be left out if I don't have a drink. People are going to think. And then we have the belief around self. And I think in that question, I hear this belief around self that you're not interesting enough or you're not good enough. And so there's a confidence thing there for you, I think, Heather, and just really looking at, okay, why do I believe that? Where did that come from? And what can I replace that belief with that, again, is believable to me, that isn't a lie? Can't put up a mantra on your thing saying, I am beautiful and confident. When you don't feel beautiful and confident, it's not going to work.
Sure.
But you can put up something saying, I am working every day to feel more confident so that I can go out without a drink. And then again, just like I was saying in the first answer, every day you start to build on that. So I think the answer again here is in your thinking, because once you get your thinking right, that's the benefit you think there's a benefit that alcohol is going to provide you courage. The truth is you don't need it. And the more that you think that, the more you believe yourself weak without it. And so if you can flip your thinking here, then that really can take care of itself.
Yeah, that's so true. You're absolutely right. You do think it makes you courageous, and actually 9 times out of 10, it ends up making you look like a fool.
And when you think it makes you courageous, you're subconsciously telling yourself that you're not courageous or you're not strong without it.
Absolutely. You can only be courageous if you've had it. When we all know actually that's not the case. So, and Heather also said, how long will it take me to accept that I can never ever drink? I'm currently in my 4th month sober.
So I don't look at it like that. And this might be totally counterintuitive to how people look at it, but I have never forced myself to accept that. And I think that how I look at it is that I do the work around every single decision. It's not work anymore. It's become mastery. It's much easier for me not to drink than it was to drink because I've done this work around my thinking. But especially in the early days, I wouldn't say I was never going to drink again, because when am I going to know that I'm successful? When I'm dead? So I have to make peace with something that I'm never going to know that I'm successful with, that's black or white. And that, by the way, tells the brain like, oh my gosh, like as soon as you say never, what does your mind want to do? It wants to cling to something. So I say, like, I drink whenever I want to drink. I just have done the work to not want to drink. And so I don't feel like I want it, but I have never made it this ultimatum or forced myself to make peace with it. I do think, though, in that question, there is an element of allowing yourself to mourn a little bit, you know? And I think we can paint this picture of like, it's all roses and sunshine. Well, the truth is we have to get used to some things. Like, we have to get used to our own emotions without alcohol. And that can be a journey. We have to face some beliefs that we have about ourselves. Yeah. And that can be a journey. So mourning the fact that you don't have this thing that is a quick flip switch that's going to make you feel better and numb out for 20 minutes, and being a little sad about that, I think allowing that feeling will help you let go of that feeling and not beating yourself up for having that feeling. Nothing's wrong with you if you allow for the fact that, like, I don't drink anymore, but yeah, sometimes I miss it. That's okay. But then I would also, right off the back of not judging yourself for that, say, well, why do I miss it? Not to try to beat yourself up or change it, but just to really get curious and understand, what is the benefit I am still believing it provides for me. And I think the combination of those two things, allowing for the missing it, not creating this ultimatum on yourself, but then also then using it as an indicator to get really curious about what is the belief you're holding on to, will really free you from that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks. Okay, just a couple more. A question from Alison, and I'm intrigued to hear your response to this one, because when I read the question, it kind of made me step back a bit. Alison says, why was I able to live a totally sober life for 7 years and 6 months and then decide it was okay to have a couple of beers, which then threw me right back into a drinking life, which I'd worked so hard to escape? I'm currently reading this Naked Mind, but I haven't figured out why my unconscious mind flipped a switch somewhere. So hard and confusing as hell.
So, Alison, I'd be curious if there was anything really emotionally going on for you when you had those few beers and when you slipped back into it. What happens is that we can, or perhaps there was something emotional going on for you why you got sober for the 7 years in the first place. What happens with alcohol is it can be relatively harmless as long as we're drinking for a completely social reason. But as soon as we start drinking for an emotional reason, what the brain does, we talked about that MRI study where the prefrontal cortex shuts off and the back of the brain lights up. The back of the brain lights up because it's become important in your brain for survival. So I'm going to tell you a little story to make this make sense. Basically, you have this hedonic threshold, and that means that just like you have a temperature, and if you were sick and had a fever, your temperature would go up in degrees, but it would still go up and down at that higher level. You have this hedonic threshold of pleasure. So hedonic is like pleasure, where certain things register. Like you're going to go for a walk, read a book, get together with friends, go shopping, whatever. They register, it goes up and down. Something really traumatic or stressful happens in your life, your entire threshold rises to the point where certain things aren't going to register anymore. Taking a walk when you're dealing with some intense tragedy, trauma, stress isn't going to just make you feel better instantly. Alcohol and other drugs artificially stimulate the pleasure center of our brain. So if you drink when you're in that elevated place, it can break through that pleasure center. And your brain says, oh my gosh, something that can get me out of this place. And it attaches to it in an evolutionary way and makes it the equivalent of like, I need this to survive. Now, there's a lot of complicated science behind that. And I go over it in podcasts and stuff, and certainly in the book, but that is the crux of it, is at that moment, your brain, whether it was before your 7 years of sobriety or whether it was before those 4 or 5 drinks, your brain has made alcohol important to your survival. Those pathways don't just go away. They just don't. And so that's why if that switch has been flipped, for some people, there's something called, I forget the word for it, but basically what it means is that your response to the drink has been conditioned, and it has changed your brain in the fact that, yes, a few drinks will throw you right back into where you were. That doesn't always happen to everybody, but if you had been drinking a lot for a long time, that definitely can happen, and it can put you right back there. And it can have more of a chemical aspect than a subconscious aspect. And that's one thing that's very fascinating, is according to the CDC, only 10% of people are chemically addicted to alcohol.
Wow.
90% of us are emotionally, physically addicted to alcohol. And by the way, it's not just 10% of people, it's 10% of excessive drinkers. So people who drink excessively, only 10% of those are chemically addicted. But that, what you're describing, 2 or 3 beers sending you right back into the pit, that's a chemical addiction. That's something in your brain that has changed and shifted to where, yes, any drink is going to bring you right back there. And so when that happens, it is very important to be very mindful and diligent. And you'll know that because, after 7 years, 2 to 3 drinks, putting you right back, like, it's just obvious. Like, yes, there's something else going on besides just what's in your subconscious.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks again. So just a couple more questions. It's quite a good one from Sarah. She says, how do you celebrate big events like birthdays, Christmas and New Year without feeling like you're missing out by not including alcohol? Does this change over time, or as ex-drinkers, are we destined to always associate alcohol with celebrations?
It does, Sarah, it does change over time, but it does take time. Okay, so a few things that play into this. I remember the very first year I stopped drinking, it was my son's birthday, and at our kids, we always provided, at my baby shower, I had a keg, right? I was like, I'm going to, even though I was pregnant and not drinking, I was going to have a keg for everybody else. It's just who I was. Like, I was the person who was always pushing alcohol on everybody. And so all of my kids' birthday parties, we always had lots and lots of booze. And so the first year of sobriety for me, I made virgin sangria and I made alcoholic sangria, and I had them both side by side. And it was just like, okay, I'm drinking the non-alcoholic. Everybody else can have the alcoholic. It was really interesting because a lot of people drank the non-alcoholic sangria. And I was like, that's interesting. Never would have dawned on me. I thought everybody was such a boozer. But
yeah, that's what I thought. Absolutely. I thought everyone was drinking 2 bottles of red wine every night.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening. But then I got through that. And because I had my non-alcoholic one, because I'd made it just as yummy, so I felt like, okay, but what I was doing is I was actually building these pathways in my brain of, all right, I can have a good time without a drink. And over time, now it would never even dawn on me to have alcohol at a kid's birthday party. Ever. Like, it would be like the silliest thing I could do. And, or Thanksgiving or Christmas or anything else. But it took me time, not only because I felt the social pressure, which quickly, kind of evaporated, but also for me, I had to rebuild celebration. You did not always associate alcohol with celebration. I guarantee you your 10-year-old birthday party was not associating alcohol with celebration, and so that was something to learn. Right. And so we learn these things over time, and you can absolutely unlearn them. You can't unlearn them purely mentally. You have to do the action. You have to go into the situation. You have to go into New Year's Eve and actually experience a New Year's Eve sober. And I'll tell you what, the first time, you have to make peace with the fact that you might be sitting on the couch with the tissues and excuse yourself at 10 p.m. and just be miserable and go watch Netflix and be in bed. Scott, he's one of my head coaches at This Naked Mind. And he says, he's like, you always want to have a plan and an excuse. And so it's like, you've got the plan, you're visualizing it, and then you've got the excuse so that you can leave if it really turns miserable. But if you don't go through the experiences, you don't allow yourself to rebuild the association with celebration. Usually what happens if you go into the experience super, super curious, you have to get rid of the voice in your head that says, this is going to be miserable. And in order to do that, you really have to rebuild, work on your thinking. But if you go into it and saying, okay, this might be miserable, but I'm going to be an observer. I'm going to experiment. I'm game to just see what happens. I know that I can't get the data for what happens if I actually drink, and I want this data more than I want to drink. I want to know the outcome. If you go into that and saying, this might be miserable, but it might not, more times than not, people surprise themselves. And the next time is easy by more than half. I mean, it is so shocking, the difference between your first time doing something and your second time doing something. My first sober wedding was and it was years into drinking. I just hadn't been to a wedding sober. My second sober wedding, easy,
Yeah.
No problem. Now I'd never even think about it. So it is amazing, the threshold of our imagined pain to reality to the next time is drops really quickly. So that put that fear out of your mind. If you can actually do the thing sober, if you make the commitment to yourself to do it sober, that will change. Your association with celebration will come back. And one of the things that I like to say, and I'm kind of going long-winded on this one, but I think it's important, is that one of the the coolest benefits and surprises that kind of snuck up on me, I'd say 3.5, maybe 4 years in, was that you get that laughing like an 8-year-old giggling at stupid stuff back. Like that has been missing. Like, yeah, you could get drunk and kind of laugh at stuff or like let go. But like that feeling, like, you know, when you get two like 12-year-old girls in a room and like they can't stop laughing for 4 hours straight, like that comes back. That sheer just kind of like giddy joy of life, like that actually comes back. And again, there's all sorts of chemical reasons for that. But I can tell you like definitively, that celebration we can all reclaim celebration from alcohol.
It's funny you say that because I've definitely found that I'm so much happier, so much less anxiety. My relationship with my teenage son, you know, we mess around like a couple of teenagers. Again, instead of me looking at my watch thinking, is it wine o'clock yet? You know, that just doesn't happen anymore. And I think another thing that's kind of goes hand in hand with the celebration side of things is the point that a lot of people make that an event is either good or bad, regardless of alcohol. It's, you know, more about who are you with and what the event's like. You know, if an event's rubbish, it's rubbish whether you're drinking or not drinking. And you know, I've found that I've been to a few events and some are good, some are bad. Drinking or no drinking, you know,
totally.
It's how it is. Okay, last question is from Leo, and he said, first the naked mind, then the alcohol experiment. What is the next big project?
Oh, I'm like literally struggling with this right now. Not struggling because it's so much fun, but also like, what is the next big project? I have my list of ideas gets longer and longer and longer. And I really want to take this naked mind beyond alcohol. And I think that whether it's taking it specifically into something like my biggest addiction right now is technology. And I notice it really affecting my moods and everything else. And I've started to do some research on it and it's just so terrifying. Oh my gosh, this is such a needed topic. Or my other biggest addiction is sugar. And so it's stuff that I want to tackle in my own life, or just taking it to like a more generic level, doing a habit change book. So the truth is, Leo, I don't know, but I'm really exploring different avenues to see kind of where it all goes next.
Oh wow, sounds exciting! And if it's technology, I think we'll all be we'll all be reading that one. We all should. Says he who runs a Facebook group. Okay, well, yeah, that's all the questions, and it's been great talking to you. Thanks for your time. And
thank you so much.
We'll all be watching out for what happens with the alcohol experiment and the launch, and hopefully some of the members will come on board and join up. I know some of them already have. So thanks again, Annie. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon. Have a great day.
And you. Bye.
Bye.